Tēnā koutou katoa. Greetings from the Book Lovers Corner for September, our monthly Book Lovers Corner book review program that we have on Arrow FM 92.7 FM every fourth Tuesday of the month from 3:30 to 4:30. And we are supported and sponsored in this by our wonderful bookshop independent bookshop in Carterton called Elmo's, of which Steve, who is on our panel here, represents the owner. Thank you. And we also have Gareth Rapson with us as always today. So welcome, Gareth.
Good afternoon.
And I'm Valda Kirkwood, and you will be able to listen to our program live on Arrow FM 92.7 or watch us on Wairarapa TV Freeview Channel 41, but it's also available on YouTube, which it's downloaded on, so you can either download the podcast from Arrow FM website or watch on YouTube. We also have each month a book review called Notes from a Far Isle from Sue, Steve's sister Sue, who used to be at Elmo's and who used to be on our panel with us. But unfortunately, she skived off north to what turns out to be long lockdown on the same island in Waiheke with her her son and grandchildren, son, daughter-in-law and grandchildren, and their winery. And so I'm sure she's waiting very, very eagerly for the library to open, to spend time with her grandchildren and to get back to the winery to have a glass of wine.
She's probably getting home deliveries.
Oh, it never occurred to me. Home deliveries, of course. One would need them in such moments as where she's experiencing, particularly with the library being locked down. And so today we're going to start off with Steve, who has brought along, because there's the flow of books is coming through now, and just an amazing pile of books here. If you'd like to introduce us to some, Steve, because there are some very familiar and beloved names amongst them too.
First of all, I just talk about Wairarapa very briefly.
Oh, yes.
So we're on the Sunday. We're bringing down a lady from Cambridge, I think, Octavia Cade, who's a science educator and writes science fiction. So it'll be authentic science fiction. It's a little bit of a departure for us. So that's 3 o'clock this coming Sunday, and we are going to be in the hub, basically the Scout Hall at the back of the event centre, because we're limited to 20 people in the Gareth Courthouse. So hopefully we'll get a few more than that. So I thought I'm not going to do any book reviews because these books are all new and I haven't read them. But I just thought I'd give people a bit of an idea of some of what we regard as big titles and a bit of a variety of what is currently available. There's a whole lot more to come. First book I want to mention is a new John Boyne called The Echo Chamber. It's a bit of a modern comedy of manners. We like John Boyne at Almost because he's written almost everything, from a book about Theodore Roosevelt to children's book. I suppose he's best known for the Blue and Striped Pyjamas, but his adult fiction is incredibly varied. Irish writer, and we like John Boyne, and we sell him pretty well. Next book is a new book by Colin Toybin, who we have also sold pretty well over the years. Some of his stuff is a little bit obscure. Some of it now a very small book, things like The Testament of Mary. This is reasonably accessible, I think.
Well, I'm relieved you mentioned the word accessible, Steve, because I haven't found him very easy to read at all. So it's a delight to know that I'll give that a go.
Yeah, so this is about Thomas Mann, who was a German novelist in the 1920s, mostly won the Nobel Prize for Literature. Complex character, complex sexuality. because he was married with children, but that's not necessarily the end of the story. Ran away ahead of the Nazis, so Colm Troy, the magician.
Now, Man's big book, I think it's like Magic Mountain or something, which is, another questionable accessible book. So maybe this book will be an access into that, a sort of window into it.
Yeah, because I understand, I don't know that much about Thomas Mann, but a lot of his stuff reflects the various complicated things going on in his life. We have a new Sebastian Faulks called Snow Country. It's going back a little bit towards birdsong, set around the First World War. Again, one of our favourite authors at Elmo's. Changing the subject a little bit, I've just taken this out of the box today. So this is Richard Osman's sequel to the Thursday Murder Club.
Yay! Great!
Man Who Died Twice. So it's still set in the retirement village. These are quite charming, a little bit eccentric, but intricate murder mysteries. And I've had people asking me about this, so be pleased it's arriving.
I think we all vied for each other on the booking list at Carlton Library for the first one, so I should imagine this list is still...
Yeah, if they're making you wait, you might have come and buy one. I just want to talk briefly about... this is called the Riviera House, written by a woman called Natasha Lester. So we've sold her reasonably steadily. She's probably not in the kind of volumes that she deserves. So we've currently got a bit of a special on her backlist, all at $9.99. So these are, I don't know, I'm never quite sure how I should put this, but it's women's fiction, but good quality. I suppose it's kind of Lucinda Riley-ish. They're not sagas and they're not sequential, but with
there's been a fair amount of reviewing I've seen out there on that book. All good.
Yeah.
Shall I add that to my list?
Yeah, I mean, it won't take you long to read. Not going to change your life, but there's something about Paris in the 30s and 40s, which are, ballet. That's not the ballet pop, is it? It's 40 years after that, but...
It seems irresistible for a novelist to head into it. I mean, there's a lot happening.
Well, that's where she sets all her stuff. Another new book, although Michael insisted that he's read it, but I don't think he has. Pat Barker's Women of Troy. So she's been writing kind of a rewriting of the Iliad and the Odyssey.
Stephen Fry got into that too, didn't
he? Did.
Yes, he did.
I wonder why. Why is this... I mean, it's a never-ending interest in this time, and
I don't know, but I mean, I guess if you're trying to read them in the original Greek, they're a bit confusing, and this helps out that a bit.
I think the thing I liked about Stephen Fry's one is he gave a very good family tree, which I found really helpful.
Yeah, well, he's written 3. The second one was Heroes, the third one was Troy, and the first one was...
Gods?
Something.
Something to do with gods.
Yeah, it was. Anyway, anybody who's read them will know. I can't remember.
And I read somewhere that Boris Johnson is a real Greek scholar.
Yes.
Absolutely, deep into it. And yes, that classic UK education's got a lot to answer for. It seems to then radiate out through the world,
Well, playing Fields of Eden to the battlefields of Afghanistan.
Yeah, no, that works.
Created an empire. This is a relatively new Val McDermid. Blood in the Wire, that sort of stuff. Tough Scottish murder mysteries. This is the first of a new series, if you like. The first Ellie Burns thriller. You've read this.
Well, I've started reading it, and I'm having trouble getting into it.
Oh.
But I'm not quite sure. But she always is. I think with Val McDermid, it does take a while to get into it because it's so tough. And I find when I reach a tough point, I often have to put it down and come back to it again, which reflects my pathetic nature. But
No, you're the intrepid adventurer.
Some books are a little bit like that. You
Yeah.
gotta. But tell me about the title. Why? I mean, it strikes me as kind of odd.
1979, it's a winter of discontent, and reporter Ellie Burns is chasing her first big scoop. So I think this is set around closing the coal mines and
yeah,
Okay.
Margaret Thatcher.
Right. So
Yes,
it's all right. It's,
Yeah. So I think that's why
and
it's
also
good,
the underbelly of what was going on in Scotland at the time.
It just seems a little unimaginative for a wordsmith to suddenly come up with a list of numbers and go, "Okay, guys."
Oh, what do you think?
Oh, no.
What do you think? 2021 next?
1984, that did all right.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Well, that was it.
Yeah.
That's been it, and suddenly we've
Oh
got
no,
this.
there's another. Who wrote Murakami? There was a.
That's right. Yeah, that's
That's IQ
IQ.
84. Or
Yeah, something he
48
twists,
or
he bends it
20.
around. And there's that Benet book HHHH. That's a similar sort of.
Well, that's about Heydrich.
Yeah.
Heydrich. isn't it?
Hedrick, but they're kind of like, I always think, the title of a book can be really good,
Yeah.
and some can be really average. In 1979, I was just thinking, yeah, strange. Anyway, what's the last one? Oh, you got a couple more.
I got two more. Just something completely different. This is a new book by Michael Pollan. I think it's two L's. It would be Pollan. It's called "This Is Your Mind on Plants." So it's talk about opium, caffeine, mescaline, and the effects of various plants and mind-altering substances.
Well,
So
and it's a lot in the news at the moment, isn't it? Particularly with the use of, say, mescaline that for treating depression. I think there's a lot of research going on internationally, going back to where it was decades ago,
yeah.
and it skipped all those years because there was such. Was it Timothy Leary
yes,
was doing research? And I think that
That's
sort
on
of
LSD,
sent in,
yeah.
and
Yeah.
all that.
yeah.
And rugby league players seem to sort of indulge in these plant substances fairly strongly.
Apparently, should be ashamed of themselves.
Well, he's 19, and having,
He looked like
cocaine-fueled
he looked like-
evening seemed a little...
and a new dad to boot.
yes, well, I
Too
expect
much.
nothing less from our rugby league players, but this is...
Anyway, he did a bit of research on these things by trying them all out.
Excellent.
So that's what
that'll
that's
be
about.
interesting.
Yeah, so he
What's
wrote
it?
the
He's
omnivore.
very familiar. So what else?
Well, he
has
wrote the
written?
omnivore's dilemma. So that's about
Oh right.
basically what's in behind the food we
Yeah.
eat, factory farming,
Right.
all that sort of stuff. So that's what he does. Now the last book I brought is I don't know if this is a kid's book or not, but it's Gavin Bishop's new book called Atua, Maori Gods and Heroes. Now he's done 3 now of these huge format picture books because he's a marvellous illustrator. First one was Aotearoa, which is a
yeah.
and the other one was I can't remember what
Nature.
it's called. Yeah, but it had all the animals.
Yes, and both of which I've bought for the families of my great nieces and nephews, and they've gone down very well.
Yeah, these are a bit of a curse for a bookseller because they're enormous format and no one's got a shelf that's designed for them. But these are outstanding illustrations, just kind of 2-page retellings of Maori myths and legends. So
Sort of every classroom, primary class, well, any classroom could...
Oh, secondary as well. I
Yeah.
think.
And a book like that retails for...
it's $40.
Okay.
So it's a lot for a kid's book, but it's almost every coffee table should have
Yeah.
one. It's certainly you can pick it up and learn about.
It's a great reflection on New Zealand publishing.
Mm.
To get books out like that find an audience. I mean, there's no doubt there's a readership out there that's clamouring for this stuff.
Yeah. Well, it certainly attracts a lot of interest in the shop window. It brings people in, and
Yeah.
it's going really well.
Well, it's got a fantastic front cover, hasn't it? I
Yeah.
mean, it's very stylish.
No, yeah, graphic art. I mean, it's off the charts, I reckon.
Yeah. Anyway, I just, as I say, I haven't actually read any of these because they're all
But by next
Quite
month,
new.
you will have,
read them all. We'll read them all by tomorrow. Anyway, so that's just a bit of a sample of the sorts of things that are coming
So
into the
next
shop.
month you might, in fact, be able to report on a couple of those. Or
No, there'll be new ones by
We
then.
have a whole bunch of new ones. I think. Yeah, it's this time of the year with.
Yeah.
I always whinge at the publishers' reps that I only ever publish anything sort of September, October, November, and they say, "Oh, well, that's when people buy them." So you don't probably want to be the only one who's bringing out a big book in April and find that there's no market. So I don't know.
But this time last year, you were forewarning about a dearth at Christmas, or for Christmas sales last year. That's obviously not the case this year.
Well, we're going to have the same sorts of issues in that if we sell out of things, we're going to have trouble replacing them. So, without wanting to be too venal about it from my point of view, I think it's still a good idea if you see something you think might be a good idea for someone for Christmas. You probably should buy it. It may not be there on the 24th. So, because there's some air freight out of Australia, the publishers are making some efforts to stock some of their bigger titles here in New Zealand, but logistically it's a challenge. So,
Yeah.
But if Almost doesn't have it, they've always got Plan B.
we'll sell you something else.
Exactly. There's a lot of good books
Good
around.
advice,
yeah.
Steve.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, yeah, we've got a shop full of stuff at the moment.
Yeah.
In fact,
And
sure where to put things.
I mean, it's just a pleasure to wander around the shop. Thank you.
so that's me.
Now, how are you, Gareth? What have you
Okay.
got to offer us for today?
Right, like I'm going to start with this book here, Why the Germans Do It Better by John Kempfner.
Very pertinent at the moment.
Yeah, and our book club actually talked about this on Sunday. It was our book, and everybody loved it. Everybody said this is a really, really good book. And I'm not sure whether it was just the fact that the election was in the wind, but it actually, in the subtitle, Notes from a Grown-Up Country, is a really, actually sends a message that this is quite an extraordinary place now in our world. Terrific book on the history. Really, it's after the war and ground zero, creating a new way for them and their economic recovery. Their series of 8 leaders that they've had, and in particular Angela Merkel for the last 15 years. And
it's quite that long.
Yes, and 4 terms.
yeah, and and it's a comparison between the UK and the Cameron, May, Boris, others.
That's the last three.
Three.
Before that was Tony Blair, I think.
Yeah,
But then they had a
and
couple of
Yes,
William
well,
Hague
yes,
and-
in the paper it went through, or was it on Stuff? It actually on Stuff. It went through. She's gone through. She's seen umpteen United States presidents, British prime ministers, Australian prime ministers, and New Zealand prime ministers.
and 2 cricket teams worth of Italian prime ministers.
Yeah, and it's really just like this is a country that brings a mature approach to leadership style, politics, economic matters, and was a correspondent for the Daily, or a journalist for the Daily Telegraph, and had worked in Germany, Russia, England, and brings a terrific sort of scope to the whole scene, and you just learn a lot about this quite extraordinary country, and it's kind of like, and a lot of lessons for us to reflect on, what we could do as a country better. And I mean, they have an economic base that's quite extraordinary. The sort of and it's a matter of scale. For them, a mid-sized company is about 250 people. In New Zealand, a mid-sized company is about 20. And there's like 2,700 of these, mid-sized businesses scattered through all out the country. They're all every little town seems to have a major business, which then funds all their drive for social cohesion. And it's, terrific book. The sort of it's Germany stands as a bulwark for decency, competence, and stability, and it's kind of like, well, just how did they get there and
Because
why?
it wasn't always like that.
Aye. Well, it's also
No.
and it's also quite critical. I mean, the trains don't run on time in Germany for some reason, and they have problems with technology.
So they should bring Hitler back. He fixed that sort of.
They stuffed. Well, that was Mussolini. They and they had problems with the pandemic. You know, they got it right, they got it wrong, they got it right. You know, they've sort of staggered through that a little bit, but they've no doubt that this is a place for all of us to have a little look at. And that book, I can't think of a better introduction to it. Next book, Stephen King. Now, who would have thought? You know, and Gail laughed at me when I was reading this. She goes, like, what are you doing reading Stephen? And there's a picture of Stephen from the listener making it.
You'd think he would be older, wouldn't you?
Making a killing. Well, I mean, he has written a lot of books. I mean, 50 books.
I love the heading of that, making a killing.
Yeah, and this is his foray into crime writing, and which he's known for his horror stories and The Shining and all that, and Carrie.
But one of the great Trivial Pursuit questions, who wrote The Shawshank Redemption?
Really? Yeah, and which is one of everybody's favourite movies.
Yeah.
And on the front it says, Guardian says, one of the great storytellers of our times. And this book is no exception. This is quite a good little thriller tale. But he's a bit like the master chef, that he can't stop adding bits to it. So, you start off as a thriller, and then it becomes a little bit of a war memoir, then it becomes a little coming of age, then it becomes a little bit of Outlaws on the Lam, but he all makes it work, and the plot is engaging. This is a well-read man. There's lots of references to other books, and our hero, our protagonist, Billy, is reading Emile Zola as he is sitting. It's sort of like it radiates a sort of intelligence through a thriller model. So if you're in the thriller genre, I'd give that one a big tick. Another quick thriller for us to look at: Ascension, Oliver Harris. His second book, which to a series is called A Shadow Intelligence, which I've also read, set in one of the stands, and I thought was a superior book to this. But this is actually a small island, about the size of Malta, about 10 by 18 miles is, and it's all the cables between Africa and
America.
South America go through it and all that. There's a murder down there. One of the agents of MI6, they're sending our flawed agent to sort it out. And on the other hand, you've got Catherine, who's running the politics back at home, and everybody's having problems. Actually, the one at home, office machinations in MI6, actually was way more interesting than our young man trying to sort it out down on the island. You go to Wikipedia, every photo in Wikipedia is actually straight out of the book. I got a feeling he did his research out straight off Wikipedia, the history, and it's sort of.
Well, there probably aren't many flights to Ascension Island, are there?
No, you've got to go to St Helena, where Napoleon was, which is about 800 miles south, and then they come down. Nobody lives there permanently. Everybody's shipped in. There's about 600 people who are there at any one time. I mean, it was fun just to get into the geography of it all. Good, solid, middle-of-the-range thriller. And final book is sports books. Now, I don't think Valda that really, is high on your list of. No. And sports books in the bookshop.
I always, before we started the bookshop, I thought that they would be enormous, but they're not for us. We sell the odd rugby book. I don't know. We've sold maybe 1 or 2 copies of Steve. I can't remember his name, the All Black coach.
This is when I think these are well-made points. That's a real niche thing, sportsmen are generally not good writers.
No,
therefore they're going to get ghostwriters,
they're fundamentally not very interesting people. You get the odd ones, and Andrei Agassi's biography is still selling well, probably considered one of the best sports biographies.
It's one of the best, open,
Yeah.
it was called. And I thought, man, this Agassi is super talented. Not only can he swing a tennis racket, but he can tell a great story. Then it came out that it was ghost-written by the Pulitzer Prize magazine, best magazine article writer, worked with him. And I go, that makes sense, because that first chapter of Open is stunning. Now, the first chapter of this is very good. He's in Denmark in the World Champs, but why there's Mark Cavendish. At Speed, My Life in the Fast Lane. I started to watch him this year on the Tour de France. In every sprint, he was the story, and he was winning sprints. And I got interested in the whole tour, as I do. Now I watched the tour so I can be in France, in the helicopters going over the little town, and we're getting the story of the castle and the church, and it looks beautiful. It's summer, and the bike riders and the pelotons racing around here. But Mark gets us right into these races. But really, these books, I mean, this is given to me by my neighbour, who was a New Zealand cyclist as a young man, and is a total enthusiast. He gave it to me to read, and I'm now going to watch the YouTube highlights of bits out of this book next time we meet. And so these things are
that's a threat. Yeah.
These things are like little homage to friendship. A friend gets you inspired, and suddenly you're into it. And suddenly I know a little bit more about cycling, and I know a little bit more about Mark, who's a really interesting sportsman. And so, once again, you've got to find the match of the person to the sport, and you've got to have your expectations cannot be too high. Finishing on this point, I have a theory of the small ball theory of sport. And that is, in sports writing, the smaller the ball, the better the writing.
So golf.
Oh.
So the great books, I think, are written about golf, in America, baseball, cricket, the small ball. The bigger the ball, once you get into football, rugby, basketball, the writing deteriorates. It's just seems endless recounts of games. But for some reason, the small ball on slow sports allows a sort of more intelligent passing of the time as the commentators absolutely work their words with magic, not so much with the big balls. I don't know what do you feel about that theory?
I suspect it might be that the people who play the big ball sports are more physical athletes and generally have shorter careers, so they don't finish growing up before they retire.
Oh, that's interesting.
Whereas the golfers,
the golfers, the baseballers, the cricketers,
people like Lee Trevino were just generally funny. I don't know if you know anything about golf, but he was really funny. And one of my favourite lines is, he says, "If there's any lightning on the golf course, I always hold up a 1-iron, because not even God can hit a 1-iron." Because it's, just about.
But the small ball theory really is about slow sports.
Yeah.
Baseball is a 3.5 hour game. Cricket is many days often.
Golf is many days.
Golf is so these are the pace allows a lot of time for the mind to work and think and discuss and talk, and maybe that's why the writing is better, because in the libraries there are more books about baseball or cricket or golf than almost all the other sports combined. So
interesting.
There you go. Anyway, that concludes the 4 quick books.
And it takes us up to our music time, our music interlude, which today, Gareth, you've chosen a country and western. Is that right?
Lyle Lovett, who wasn't he married for 2 weeks to somebody famous?
Oh, pass.
Yeah, somebody. But anyway, no, I thought I've always liked the title track of this CD.
And the title track is "Don't Touch My Hat."
Man, you better go. You can't hold on to what belongs to me and don't belong to you. Well, I caught you looking with your roving eye. So mister, you don't have to act so surprised. But if it's her you want, I don't care about that. Well, you can have my girl, but don't touch my hat. Well, I grew up lonesome on the open range, and that cold north wind can make a man feel strange. My John B. Stetson was my only friend, and we've stuck together through many a woman. So if it's her you want, I don't care about that. Well, you can have my girl, but don't touch my hand. My mama told me, son, to be polite, take your head off when you walk inside. But the winds of change, they fill the air, and you can't set your hat down just anywhere. So if you plead not guilty, well, I'll be the judge. We don't need no jury to decide, because well, I wear a 7 and you're out of order. 'Cause I can tell from here you're a 7 1/4. And if it's her you want, I don't care about that. Well, you can have my girl, but don't touch my hand. Say if it's her you want, I don't care about that. Well, you can have my girl, but don't touch my hand. No, it never complains, and it never cries. It looks so good, and it fits just right. So if it's her you want, I don't care about that. Well, you can have my girl, but don't touch my hand. Well, you can have my girl, but don't touch my hand. Well, you can have my girl, but don't touch my hand.
Welcome back to Arrow FM 92.7 and Book Lovers Corner, which we broadcast every month, 3:30 to 4:30 on the last Tuesday of the month. And we're now currently going to walk to the part of the program where we talk about our notes from the Far Isle that Sue Lawrence regularly sends us every month. And under extreme conditions in the last few months, having been in lockdown on Waiheke Island.
Yeah, because she said when the preface to this week's, if it was from medium security, she said.
Yes, from medium security.
Anyway, her first book, Soul Sister by Leslie Locko. Now, I'd never, she goes on, I've never heard of Leslie and was surprised to learn that she is the author of 10 books, now 11, and being an academic in architecture. So, are you familiar with her at all?
No.
No, I've never.
No, these both pre-reading copies that she got sent from our friend Joe from Macmillan, who
But I mean,
keeps her
I've
sane.
not heard of either of the
No, but
authors.
for
the
somehow
second,
it's found a home on the island, you know, and she's reached out from the hammock and just, it's arrived.
Turned up in the post. Yeah.
That's right. And she read it, and she said she read it quickly and enjoyed it. It had many good ingredients. There's a sort of Scotland and exotic South Africa, which is a nice combination. And it sort of dealt with politics and family secrets and cultural identity, which seems to be the flavour of the month, and enduring friendship, which has been a staple of writing forever. Two little girls, one from South Africa and one from Scotland, are raised together in a repressed household in Scotland, which must have something to do with either the weather or the type of buildings they have over there. But it's kind of dour.
Or
that
the
idea.
whiskey. Or
The whiskey, yeah. And they remain friends throughout the years, despite their varied interests and ambitions. As adults, their paths cross, and through meeting a charismatic South African black politicians, and suddenly we're getting an exploration of the past in South Africa, the two of them, and what they find is an even deeper secret. It's always nice to have a secret that we're working our way through towards, in which countries continues to have an influence. Sue says it's a good read, and I've requested another book from the library, which is always a good idea. And she said, should it ever open? And she's now got a list of 20 books on the reserve list. And Sue is suffering the problem all of us who are big library bookers, who book a lot of things. As Steve tells us, it's great. We go and find it, and suddenly they all come at once. So, suddenly the library does contact you, and Sue's going to get this. She's going to get, and they're like, there are 6 books waiting for you.
Oh, no, she will have she's got more than 6 on her list.
She's got 20, but there'll be 6 will arrive on one day, and then a week later, another few. That's why the secret is to request or look for slim books. You see, this is my thing of the day, that the books today, everything is just getting too big. And Steve, you were saying that they're getting paid by the word. It's
well, they sort of do, Gareth, because a new trade paperback retails somewhere from $32 to $37. People pick it up, 150 pages, and they say, "Oh, that's quite a lot per page. I'll get the 800-page one."
Really?
I don't know. I think so.
No, you do want value for money.
It's hard to sell thin books.
Yeah.
I know, it's good to read them.
Interesting.
We get through them. So, there it is, Soul Sister by Leslie Loco.
Well, the second one is Devotion by Hannah Kent. Now, like Gareth, I haven't heard of Hannah before. And apparently she has 2 previous books, Burial Rites and The Good People. Burial Rites is very familiar.
Yeah, I think that's about the last woman hung in Ireland or something. Or
Yes.
it's something about an execution.
So, and both are based on, both those ones were based on historical facts. So she's in, and I can understand Sue, who is into history, would love books like this. And so Hannah Kent's third one is based on a people who have come from Prussia to South Australia. And there is, in fact, if you've been down in South Australia, you will know that there are whole communities there of German/Prussian who come from the mid-18th century.
Yeah, that's the basis of the South Australian
Wine
industry up in the Adelaide Hills. It looks like little Germany. I mean, straight out of why the Germans do
and
it
I
better.
think a lot of the names too
go
back to Germany and Prussia as it was then. And once again, this story is about 2 young women who are friends. So similar to the book that you were describing too, Gareth. And the friendship between these 2, Thea and Hannah, and their families decide to become part of the trend or the exodus of the Lutherans to Australia. And their relationship develops during the voyage. And despite the childhood in the rural community being very, very dominated by religion and superstition, but also taking into account the natural world, And that relationship between Thea and Hannah develops through the voyage and becomes so strong that they can't even be parted by death. So Sue was saying it's a gothic novel, a bit of a gothic or dark story with the gothic novel element, rather like Emily Bronte's Wuthering Heights, where Heathcliff's love for Cathy overcomes barriers of time, class, life and death, and Charlotte Bronte's Jane Eyre. So it's quite an intriguing...
Big comparisons.
Yeah, they are very big comparisons. And so much so that Sue went and looked up the part where Jane Eyre speaks to Rochester. I am not talking to you now through the medium of custom, conventionalities, nor even of mortal flesh. It is my spirit that addresses your spirit. So the fact that Sue went and actually looked up her copy of Jane Eyre to find that particular quote sort of really affirms her seeing, what comparisons there are.
So obviously, getting her out of the hammock for a start to go and do this. Good work on her. And just how much free time does this woman have to go check me?
How many hours are there in a day?
It's amazing, yeah. No, life in Mahiki is obviously it's kind of time expands.
Yeah,
well, particularly if you're in lockdown.
After she's walked the dog, and remember, Holly's getting on a bit, that's pretty much it.
Only your brother could say that. Okay, go on. Here we go.
Right, and so Sue's comment about the book is Hannah Kent's writing is beautiful and convincing, and she operates well in the context of concerns of today, such as gay marriage, colonialism, and the relationship of people to nature. The historical content of the story is well described and very relevant. The title is important, and devotion becomes a more challenging read when it moves into the spiritual realm. Stick with it, though, as it is a moving and memorable story. Now, that is high praise indeed from Sue. So, Sue, we will take your recommendations and perhaps run with them.
You might.
Thank you, Sue, yet again, and hang in there. You'll be getting your library list or your library open shortly, I would hope.
Now, Valda, what have you got to tell us about?
Well, what I've got to tell, talking about gay marriage, I have read something recommended last time by Steve, which is Anne Cleeve's The Heron's Cry, which I just loved. And it is Anne Cleeve's, as we talked about last time, 2 weeks ago.
Yes. Didn't seem long ago.
Talked about her writing of Vera and Shetland. And this is, as we said, that this is the new one. Matthew Venn, who is down in Devon. But he who grew up as a very, very repressed young person, or child and young person, within a brethren community where his parents just were totally brethrenized. And he has married his partner, a bloke who's very arty and into the community, very, very different to be a police inspector married to a gay artist. And what I took out of this book, in addition to what Steve talked about last time, what I love about Anne Cleeve's writing is that she develops the characters as she goes from book to book. And so we started off with Matthew Venn being very uptight and straight and thorough, which is what you would want a detective inspector to be.
But the uptightness would be, this is the police world would be, one of the most masculine, boysy worlds.
But that was how he was brought up as well.
Right.
And so the combination makes it a very... Oh, okay. And so if he's partnered to a very relaxed, communicative, extrovertish gay guy, And you can see in this book how Matthew's thoroughness and strictness and go by the rule book is influencing his mate, but his mate with his relaxment is actually also influencing Matthew to be a bit more relaxed.
Yeah,
And
because
it's-
as I was talking before, it was nice when his mum came for lunch. She was pretty reluctant.
That
but
was
had
just
quite a
an
nice time.
absolute. That was just absolutely a delight. The father died. He had not had anything to do with his family, or as little as possible,
And vice versa.
and vice versa. But his partner wants his mother to come for lunch because it's her birthday, the first one without her husband, his Matthew's father, and the partner, of course, is into cooking and loves cooking and gets all the good crockery out, lots of vases of roses, makes it a really, really nice touch. And Matthew is very, very hesitant about all this.
Because the first book, I think, started with his father's funeral and he didn't
Yeah,
die.
that's right. Yeah.
Okay.
And so,
So you'd read those in order.
you have to,
Yeah.
Yeah, you could do.
well, to get the development, you do.
Yeah.
And so the mother actually is much more accepting, tries things that she would never otherwise try, even a bit of champagne. And actually, the pièce de résistance is that she writes a thank you letter, thank you card. It's an absolute delight. So totally unexpected things happen. And so Anne Cleves, she's very, very clever. She pulls you in, she develops the characters, she puts in off-the-wall experiences that just add to the whole story and add to the atmosphere. Very impressive.
Yeah, it's like the sergeant is a woman called Jennifer,
Yeah.
who's got 2 teenage kids, drinks a bit much, and is desperately worried about being an appalling mother.
Yeah.
So, it's just quite human.
Very,
okay.
very human. Yeah.
These are sensitive, new age police people by the sound.
Or just real people, really.
Just real
Yeah,
people. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's okay. No, I was such a big fan of Shetland, the TV series, but I've never been drawn to open one of her books. But it sounds like there's
We've got some
2 of you.
backlists for $9.99. You could squeeze that out of the budget. I'll tell Gail.
Yeah, no, it's the sort of thing. Actually,
I think
and
Gail, I think, would enjoy them.
yeah, no, Gail likes a good police procedural, and
Yeah.
but I'm also thinking, what else have we got? Because we've got
Yeah,
quite a few
yes,
things
yes,
to get us
okay.
through.
Right, Louise Penny, the latest of the wonderful Louise Penny, who has the Inspector Gamanche, and in the Quebec Police Department. And this one is set in Canada, as you would expect, between Christmas and New Year, and there is going to be a public speaker who turns out to be a talk by an academic statistician. And they were thinking, who on earth is going to fetch up for a lecture by a statistician at that time of the year? Why would anybody book for that? Well, behind all that lies an enormously complex story. The statistician herself has been doing it's Canada in a post or semi-post-COVID world, and she's been doing a lot of research on all that sort of area. And her interpretation of the stats leads to a suggesting to the politicians and so on that eugenics and euthanasia might be the way forward. And it is so relevant to today when there is conversations, and you hear it even on Q&A, how many deaths are you prepared to have if we open up? And it's so she's really hit the zeitgeist, I think, Louise Penny.
Because this book's called Madness of Crowds,
The
isn't it?
Madness of Crowds.
And I don't know if she borrowed the title, but from Douglas Murray's book, the same title, which is kind of about free speech. So it kind of relates.
That's very relevant to today. You know, what can you say? What can't you say? And that's where the whole, was it woke, which I actually don't really understand. You know, this woke, whatever woke means.
I think I know what it means. I just don't know where it came from.
It's like political correctness. They fly around, and the definitions of them are, it's a sensitivity to, or an oversensitivity.
Well, it's an epithet now, isn't it? If you accuse someone of being woke, that means that they're...
Well, we had that with the feather symbol.
We did.
Town.
Exactly. And that's, J.K. Rowling said some things which, if you're vaguely interested in women's sport, seem pretty defensible. And we've had that, discussion about Laurel Hubbard. I'm not going to tell you what my personal view is, because I might offend someone who might otherwise come and buy something from me, but I think you can tell.
Well, so there we are. Louise Penny has hit the nail on the head in terms of the topic for the moment. As with any of hers, you've got, again, developments of characters, developments of a community, because Gamonche lives in a community, Three Pines, and you've got various very odd characters, like Ruth with her duck, and so again you want to start back if you're going to read them.
Canada for a setting, I mean, it's such a quiet, kind, benign place.
No.
The Mounties, are they figuring it?
No. This is the Quebec. This is the French part of Canada. So it's very much the sûreté.
That's in Paris. Did they have that in?
Yeah.
No,
okay.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I was. Well, I mean, I'm always wanting a few Mounties if I've got my.
Well, I think you'll find he's a very interesting bloke. This chief inspector. And he goes about, has created a wonderful team about him. And they've been through so many challenging times by being blown up and shot and so on. The team is quite strong, so that they can meet in their pyjamas at 3:30 in the morning to just go over the case matters, because none of them are sleeping. And they're obviously not sleeping because the lights on in the auberge, and somebody else's lights on up the road, and so very very worthwhile, interesting, and keeps you entranced till the end, with really very relevant themes for today. Joanne Harris, another popular one that I've always liked, which she's Chocolat. Some of you be familiar with Chocolat. This one is
the dreaded
not quite sure what to say.
Yeah, that's right. Now, Valda, what's that mean?
Well, her other books that I've read, which often mention oranges and chocolat and pears, and they're very easy to read.
Sort of your fruit salad.
You've got your fruit salad. This one is very, very... It took me a wee while to get into it. It's two protagonists, a male and a female, and so you've got two threads of the story told, and they come together at the end. And as in Louise Penny's Madness of Clouds, the denouement is sort of on the last page, and it all comes together. And it's about a woman who loses, well, her older brother disappears when she's about 5, and it's a mystery. The parents stay put then, and so the daughter grows up, this woman grows up without any parenting, because the parent, if she goes to visit even, decades later, she was given the favourite chocolate biscuit of the son, and treated, birthday is the celebrated birthday is the disappeared brother's birthday, and so on. So, and she of course has a lot of resentment because of all that, and she ends up becoming a teacher and teaching at the school where the brother was last seen. And in addition to that, the bloke is involved in teaching there. She ends up becoming the principal of that school and opens the school to the girls.
So this is set in England?
As is set in England.
Because you said she was Anglo-French.
Yeah, she's that's really interesting. Joanne Harris herself is Anglo-French. One parent is French, the other is English. The English family don't speak French. The French family don't speak English. So she, as you were saying, Steve, she's probably been the conduit between both. Yep. And Chocolat, as we know, and many of the others, were set in Paris. And so that also, as you with your Tour de France, the whole French Paris bit is very full of romance and so on. This isn't. This is quite hard and challenging, I thought.
Right. Note in the notes there's one more.
One more, and I think that's going to be...
You're not going to bump this off the list. I mean, the anticipation from us, we've been waiting, 2 weeks. 2 weeks for this.
Yes, it'll be bumped off to the next month.
And why did you want that little book?
And this little book here is another one, a new one that's in the... all this is for you. It's a New Zealand cartoonist or artist who you may recall did a cartoon that when we had the murder of all the Muslims in Christchurch, she did a cartoon that captured with a Muslim woman and somebody else hugging each other like Jacinda, and then she did the front page of Time. And so as a result of that, her life has been transformed, and she has written this book, All This Is For You, A Little Book of Kindness by Ruby Jones. And I just think it would be well worthwhile having a look at. And I think we've almost come to an end. So very quickly, what we've done today, please.
Right, Kampfner, Why the Germans Do It Better. This is definitely my pick of the week. Mark Cavendish, Life on a Bicycle. Billy Summer by
Stephen
King. A well done thriller that will actually have a bit more than you expected. And Ascension, a middle of the range MI6 thriller. And
I'm not going to go through my list, but if you want to find them, come and see us.
Yeah. Right. So Steve has a pile of new books there waiting for your eyes to glaze through. Mine were Joanne Harris, A Narrow Door, Louise Penny, The Madness of Crowds, and Cleves, The Heron Story. So that's us for today from the Book Lovers Corner.
Thank you, Valda.
Thank you, Gareth. Thank you, Steve. And we'll see you in a month's time. Thank you.